going on out there in our culture as it relates to COVID-19. A lot of varying opinions, a lot of diverse ideas and thoughts about it. And I believe, and what needs to happen is that we need to encourage people to get tested for COVID-19. If you got any symptoms or you feel bad, to certainly self-quarantine and stay in, to people to do the hand sanitizing, to do the physical distancing. And I really emphasize physical distancing versus social distancing. And we'll talk a little bit later about the ramifications of using social distancing versus physical distancing, and what that can do to the psyche. And so I really encourage people to do the physical distancing, do the hand washing, sanitizing the areas, to use the mask in those public places. And it's so important for people to also boost their immune systems, because that's the real fight, is when you boost your own immune system, that we were made in the divine intelligence. The Bible says we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that our souls know right well. And I think as ministers and as preachers of the gospel, it's important that we encourage people to boost their immune system, because we were created with one to be able to fight off infection and disease. And we can do that by eating our vegetables, drinking plenty of water, also exercising, letting go of stress and tension and pressure. We can also boost our immune system by getting our proper rest, eating healthy foods, and all those things help to boost the immune system so that it can fight off any disease and infection, because that's really what's going to make the difference, is our own immune system, in addition to all those external things that we can do. And it is challenging. I can say, as a spiritual leader, when the numbers are changing from day to day, and the statistics and the hospitalizations and the deaths, and it looked like it was getting better, and now it looks like we're talking about in the fall there would be another outbreak, but we're in the summer. It is happening, where it seems like the numbers are increasing in several states, and especially in the United States of America, where we've been being blocked from certain countries. They only want us coming in because the numbers are going up. So how do we look at this? How do we address this as a church? And I am an avid supporter of every person needs to do what they need to do for their soul's unfoldment. And that some people, like today's Church Tampa Bay, we offer 3 different options. That some people desire a physical distancing experience, so we do the drive-in service at 9 o'clock, and people can stay in their cars, and they don't have to touch people or contact anybody. They can stay in their cars, but they can still see people, give their hallelujah high five and their wonderful wave to people from a distance. And some people just need to see people. And then there are other people who are content watching from home. So we do a virtual service at 10:30. And those people who just want to be in the comfort of their own home, that they can have that experience. And then there's some people who desire to be in the physical building, but in a disinfected place with the physical distancing, with the mask. And so we offer that. So I really believe that the real solution is that the more that we can be diversified, realizing that different people have different needs, and that whatever a person needs to do for their soul's unfoldment, that it's okay. That we not beat up anybody who desires to open their doors and comply with guidelines, and that we not shame anybody for closing their doors, but still opening up their hearts and ministering virtually. And at the same time, that we be open to creative ways of giving and connecting, like with the drive-in service. So I'm saying we need to do all of it. As long as we're in compliance with the guidelines, I believe that we're safe, that when we follow order and protocol. And I believe as spiritual leaders, it's important that we be tested for COVID-19 so that we can model for people and be a good example of taking care of ourselves, taking care of our health, and know that the church is a safe place. So my answer is that we need to do it all. We need to be open to all of those ideas.
Well, so what we're going to do now, Dr. Pulley, because we have some experts that are going to chime in on the wealth of information that you shared in just those few minutes. what we're now going to do is we're going to, just like we do in the Holy Convocation, we're now going to take your mitre as the presiding bishop. And for those of you who are like, well, what's a mitre? That is the papal type hat that the presiding bishop wears. And we're going to place that on the table. And so tonight, now that you have given us such sound wisdom as our presiding bishop, we're now going to switch hats. And so we're now going to put you in the seat of the mental health professional, because we know that you're also a licensed psychologist. And so you are our mental health expert on tonight. We have other experts with us. We have Dr. Wayne Stokeling, who is with us tonight, and he is the spiritual leader of New Journey Church of Brooklyn, and he's a reverend doctor. He's a spiritual leader, but he also has a doctorate in economics, and so he's going to share with us on tonight. We've got Gina Folk, who I had the pleasure of meeting in Florida, but she is doing great things for her soul's unfoldment, and she is an expert of many things, and she is like one of the most knowledgeable people. You know, when I came in contact with her, I was like, wow, it was like the wow factor. And I'm not just saying that, you know, to flatter her. And so she is a great person that deals with companies and how to optimize. And so she's going to talk to us tonight about how the church can optimize, even in the midst of what's temporarily going on right now. And then we have a personal friend of mine. I'm so happy. I call him Justin, but he's the actual doctor. He's actually Dr. Justin Morissette. And we've been talking about, you know, Black Lives Matter versus Black Lives Are Equal. And I'm just really proud of Dr. Morissette. He got his bachelor's in chemical engineering from Hampton University. But at 30 years old, Dr. Stokeling, he got his PhD or his doctorate degree in biomedical engineering. Just, you know, I've been practicing that for a long time. But his PhD in biomedical engineering from Hopkins University, right here in Baltimore. Yeah, and his master's in public health. And am I getting it right, Justin? He's now finishing his postdoctorate fellowship, and then going on to finish his medical education. And so we also see Dr. Zimmerman on the line. So we just welcome everybody to the conversation. Thank you all so much. I know that you all saw the flyer, and Dr. Danny Flanagan was to be with us on tonight. He sent his apologies. He had an emergency with his son. And so at the last minute, I pulled on a resource of Dr. Zimmerman's and called Dr. Stokeling and said, what you doing in about half an hour? And so he was able to join us. So thank you all. Welcome to this conversation. Thank you for those of you who are watching us by way of Facebook Live. Again, share this important conversation on your pages. And feel free to make your comments, ask your questions, and we will do our best to include them throughout the evening. We're going to go ahead and get it going. Dr. Stokeling, good evening.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Hey, thank you again. Listen, so as a spiritual leader, and I heard one of your sessions recently, as a spiritual leader, what are some things that you consider important for all spiritual leaders when prayerfully considering the timing to reopen the buildings? What would you say to that, Dr. Stokeling?
Well, I have been speaking to one of the areas here in Brooklyn. I'm not a bishop. I'm a moderator, which has some ecclesiastical standing, but I advise churches, they're not under me, they're under our association, but I run the association. What I've been asking them to do is do not become frantic, because many of our clergy, they became frantic. And when you see them on Facebook, or you see them on Zoom, or you see them, the thing that many of their ministries present, they're not saying to the people in your sequestering, how are you mentally? How are you physically? How are you financially? They are telling the members, we miss you, but most of all, these are the ways you can give. Now, as a financial person, I understand that Facebook is not a sense of we have a camaraderie or relationship, or we have entered into any type of, we have not entered into any type of a formal relationship. So money has been the main focus. Lack of many of the ministers will almost make you believe that God isn't going to provide for us during COVID, post-COVID. So what I try to do with the 60 ministers who allow me to serve them, I try to get them away from financial panic, because what is happening in Brooklyn, many persons are surviving the onslaught of COVID, but then being devastated by the lack of finances. So what I've been trying to do is to make the pandemic looked by people the same way the 1% are looking at this. And quickly, a man named Warren Buffett, he has $125 billion, and he just spent money 3 days ago. He bought Duke Electric and he bought 2 other energy companies. He sat down, he sold much of his stock, and he said the pandemic is not the time for you to make financial decisions. Well, Mr. Buffett is not an economist. Mr. Buffett is an investor. Every time that, even from 2012, even with the bubonic plague, the Medici family came out as bankers. We entered into 2-phase accounting, debits and credits out of the bubonic plague. So what I try to do when I speak to my ministers, I try to ask them, you can clean the church, you can sanitize the church, you can have the mask, you can talk. Now, how are you going to feel if you can hold out for 6 to 8 months financially? You'll have more money than you could ever spend, because the people who are coming back from COVID are going to be some of the most generous people that you could ever meet in your life.
Got it.
So that is what I do.
Got it. Thank you. And we have Gina Folk with us tonight, like I shared earlier. And Gina Folk, do you have any suggestions? Dr. Stokely just shared with us, based on what he said, what suggestions might you have or recommendations for churches that may have been impacted or taken a financial hit as a result of having to, close the doors to its building during this temporary pandemic?
Yeah, having worked with businesses that are taking hits out in the world, it's your time to really evaluate all of what you're doing, right? Just because you were doing it before, I think this is God's way of helping us kind of redetermine what the plan is and are things important anymore. One of the things that I find when I work with businesses is that we continue to do things because we've always done them that way. And oftentimes they don't make sense anymore. And we were spending money doing things that really aren't adding value, but they've been that way forever. So now I encourage all businesses, and I have a major medical practice that we're doing this consistently with, is why are you doing this? What is the reason you're doing this, and what value is it adding? Right. And so as a church, although a church is a spiritual house, a place where people come get fed spiritually, a church is a business as well.
Yes.
And so I really encourage the leaders, whether it's through your board of trustees or whatever governing body, and the spiritual leader come together and really put all the cards on the table and ask yourselves, why are we doing this and what value is it adding? Really take out your pencils, look at your finances. And Dr. Wayne was talking about this, really evaluate where your money's going. Do you need to be spending money? Is it the right thing to do right now? Knowing that God, we get it, God is our source. And right now we are in a pattern where we want to examine everything. So I think this is our opportunity to just examine it and understand what value we're adding for the future. And is what we're doing to the highest and greatest of God's good for us and the world, right? So
I love that. I love it. I love the reminder that God is our source, and I have to smile because I'm smiling and gritting my teeth at the same time, because I know that perhaps some of the leaders of my local assembly, Kingdom Covenant Ministries, are probably watching, and so they have probably written it down and will remind me in our next board meeting. Gina Folk says, is this an absolute necessary expense?
Yeah.
I love you,
That's
Gina
funny.
Folk. Love you.
That's funny. That's funny. That's
love
funny.
you. Oh my goodness. And that just makes such good practical sense. And so, thank you for just reminding us, both you and Dr. Wayne, about just those, practical strategies and things to consider when it comes to finance. Not just, I would imagine, not just during a temporary pandemic, but just in season and out of season altogether. So thank you.
It's a way to operate always. I mean, I tell people all the time, if I ever ask you why are you doing something and you say it's because we've always done it this way, it's time to re-question and look at that and really see, is this really the right thing to do?
And Sister Hope, have you found that many times what COVID has done, it has acted as an invisible auditing team. It has shown the church that many things that we must have, we don't need them.
Yeah, I think, if you think about it, what we've done as a health, right? And we look at, I like to put commonalities together. What are we being asked to do? We're being asked to continuously cleanse and clean up and sanitize. Well, why not take that and look at everything that we're doing? We're cleaning and sanitizing processes and where our spending is going and thinking about it and being more mindful.
That is powerful. That is powerful.
Yeah.
That is very powerful. Yes, very metaphysical, very powerful.
I love that. Go, Gina Folk. Listen.
Somebody taught me how to do that.
Anybody that's listen, you heard it. Look, you've heard her. Anybody that's looking for a strategist or an optimist on your team, Gina Folk, look her up. We will put her website on the site. Look, get her. You want her.
Definitely.
So she's talked about the financial health. So now let's spend a little time talking about the medical aspect. Dr. Morissette, with regards to the church over COVID-19, as I insist on saying tonight, we heard Dr. Pulley mention some things in the overview. But what would you say as our medical professional tonight are some of the precautionary measures that you would recommend for us as we prepare ourselves to return to our buildings? Some of us have not returned yet. From a medical perspective, what do you recommend tonight?
Sure. So I would think of it more or less from a public health perspective, thinking of us working together as a unit, your parishioners as well as the pastors and your whole congregation. So at first, when I talk about COVID, I like to address it as what it is. So it's severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. So leaving that out, I think people forget the severity of the illness and what it can actually do. So you have to address it by what it is and understand how serious it truly is. So if I say COVID to you, you think of it as just another disease, but when you include that acute respiratory syndrome, you then start to think about, hey, this actually may be a little bit more serious. And it's hard to battle people with having various understandings, various interpretations of what's been presented, misinterpretations of what's been presented, and various sources just coming out giving you spews of information. So I think as churches begin to design a program and implement return into the building, we have to think about, we don't know where all of our parishioners have been. You can't keep a tab on everyone. So you have to be cognizant of, as you bring people into the building, how can we do this in the most safe, efficient, and effective manner that's in line with the CDC and the World Health Organization? Because you want to make sure that they're safe, that you're not a liability for anything that happens while they're in your care, essentially. So then understanding what's been presented, we know the social distancing or physical distancing with the 6 feet, also being cognizant that masks are extremely important. And they're not just protecting other people, they're also protecting you. Keeping in mind, just in general, how we're going to enter, exit, there are just so many things that you have to keep in mind about spacing. I actually saw something about comfort. So some people may feel that, you know, this distance is an issue because they're used to being touchy-feely and being close to the people that they love and they want to be around. And that is great, but this is just a time of different understanding. So we have to be cognizant that we have to take a step back and not just think about what we're used to, but what we need to do just to get through this period. And so we'll talk about that more as time progresses in the call. And one thing I found that I thought was pretty interesting that I'd like to kind of, I guess, leave with you just to think about: coronavirus explained in terms of crafts. You and 9 friends are crafting. One is using glitter. How many projects have glitter? So that thinks about, you guys have all played with glitter. So you know, after one person has glitter out, over time, every project has a piece of glitter. So think about it in terms of keeping people safe when you're in church. One person may have it, but at the end of the service, after that long exposure of time, how many people are going to leave with that? So I think as we begin to get back into the church, we want to keep that in mind, keeping our parishioners safe, and kind of, I would guess, plan so that every scenario has been addressed and we have a strategy for it.
I was listening very carefully, Dr. Morissette, and in particular, yes, look, I'm a 4th grade elementary school teacher, and glitter is the ultimate taboo in my classroom. When they get ready to do the supply list for the incoming year and I see glitter, I scratch it right off. Because listen, that glitter, it's in your eyebrows, it gets under your nails, you just have glitter everywhere. When I say everywhere, I mean you have glitter everywhere. We won't dwell there. But then, and we love, in the Church of Everlasting Kingdom and Kingdom Covenant Network, we love acronyms. And that acronym stood out to me, or the acronym C. You know, what are the things that we want to see to or see about? And I heard you talk about, you know, what is safe, what is effective, and what is efficient. And so I thought those were great nuggets out of all of the wealth of all the other things that you share with us. So, you know, thank you so much for that. This is just like already great conversation. And so I feel like not only am I a moderator tonight, but I'm a spiritual leader taking mental notes and all kinds of notes for, okay, great, gotta look into that financially, gotta look into that. Dr. Pulley, you are now tonight, not just presiding bishop, but also our mental health professional, our psychologist on tonight. As a mental health professional, what are some things that we should be mindful of with regards to, and this is you know, one that I really hope people listen to, with regards to being sensitive and respectful of others, when the reality is that we don't necessarily know who may or may not be challenged with things like anxiety or OCD or other mental health diagnoses. What do you say to us on tonight?
I think it's very important from a mental health perspective that we realize that different people are reacting and responding to COVID-19 in various ways. And notice that earlier I talked about physical distancing versus social distancing. I feel like whoever came out with the social distancing word, that they were not thinking about the mental health of people. That when you tell people that they need to be socially distant, it gives the idea of isolation. It gives the idea that I cannot connect with other people. And we don't need people to be socially distant. We need them to be physically distant, which is the 6 feet apart. So it's more, we need people need to connect socially. That's why we call it social media, because people need to connect socially. It's the physical piece that we desire people not to connect on a physical level as much as possible, to keep themselves safe and to keep other people safe. But as soon as you say social distance, there's a resistance that comes up in people's mind, because we are social people. We love people. We desire to connect with the people that we love. So it's important to show people that there are other ways to connect beyond physical. You can text. You can email, you can talk to people on the phone, you can do FaceTime, you can do Facebook, you can use all these social media settings to be able to connect. I've even been advising clients who cannot see their loved ones who are in nursing homes and hospitals, how people are standing outside of the hospital and waving and talking to their people through the glass. They need to socially connect. It's the glass, the physical distance that is necessary. So I think the words are so important so that people don't feel isolated and depressed. And also with people feeling anxious. There's some people, it's not that they don't love the Lord, it's not that they don't love you, but there is a great fear of catching the virus. And some people who already feel like their health is compromised through various diagnoses, their anxiety goes up. And so as much as we can tell people that it's okay for you to feel exactly how you feel, that we love you, we understand, we support you, and again, that diversity. And I think you showed something to me some time ago where people get to say, okay, where I am, just wave to me. Don't even say nothing to me. I'm just barely here, where people got different colors to be able to say, okay, this is where I'm here, but I don't desire to connect. I'm here, but let's connect with a distance, so that people can feel empowered to choose for themselves what works for them. And I know a lot of times we're used to uniformity when it comes to church, everybody doing the exact same thing. But this is a time where our unity is in our diversity and empowering people to be able to do different things for their own level of comfort. And you're not less saved or sanctified or less faith if you're more cautious than other people may appear. But everybody has to do what their comfort level is. And I believe that's the real mental health perspective.
Wow. This is an amazing conversation. And again, I just encourage those of you that are watching, share this important and dynamic information. And I heard you say, as Gina Folk said, yes, I know you may have done this before. I know this may be what you've always been doing. That seems to be a theme on tonight, but let's really take into consideration how that needs to play out, in this current reality. So just thank you for all of that perspective. Yes, my daughter Katrina did share with me that there are different color codes and different bracelets, colors that people can wear. A red bracelet, don't come near me. We can give them bands. Yellow bracelet, take me slow. Green bracelet, hey, I'm all for it. Come on, let's talk. Just to, so that people kind of know. Because, like you said, it's the diversity. This is a very diverse season and a very diverse time, and we have to not only recognize that diversity, but respect that diversity.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for that perspective, Dr. Pulley. We greatly appreciate it. Gina Folk, as you and Dr. Pulley are connecting on that thread of what has always been may not be the best for moving forward. As we are trying to have a positive impact in our churches for mental wellness and physical wellness and medical wellness, talk to us a little bit more, if you could please, about that, because you said it so profoundly about that financial health, that financial wellness.
Oh, wow.
Or any other
well,
let
me tell you, there's a couple of things I think I would encourage anyone that's a spiritual leader to consider as they're thinking about opening back up, because it's divine timing, right? Today I had to create a protocol because the numbers in the area that my client is in are starting to rise. And so where people had gotten a little bit comfortable with where we were, now the numbers are starting to rise. And so we've had to create a brand new protocol to come out and say, here's all the things you have to do. Masks are required, make sure you're sanitizing. I mean, people know this stuff, but I think we have to, as a business, it is our obligation and our responsibility to ensure that we can put the protocols in place to ensure that we're safe. Another thing that we have to consider as you think about opening up your doors is to be able to keep a very clear record of who is in the building and who they've been in contact with, because contact tracing is becoming, and I'm sure Justin can talk about that more than I can. It is very important now, to me, it's a service that we're doing for everybody. to make sure that you can, if needed, to go out and contact those individuals. So I just think that now more than ever, it's not just about opening up the doors and making sure it's clean. Again, we're meeting people where they are. I have been in New York and not in Florida for the last little bit, and I can say it's a much more comfortable environment for people to be in to some degree, because there's masks are expected, right? So there's no questioning, there's no underlying judgment, that people subconscious judgment of why is somebody wearing one and why isn't somebody else wearing one, no questioning any of that kind of stuff going on. And as a business, I think it's important that you take the high road, right? We, especially as a church, we take the high road and do what the professionals are recommending. As you're doing that, you have to take into consideration there is expense in doing that. Some places are asking that temperatures be taken. If you choose to do that, that's the ultimate screening capability. If you choose to do that, there's going to be some expenses. There's going to be resources that have to do that. So I think you've got to, from a financial health perspective, I would just recommend come up with what you desire the protocol to be, and then really evaluate what the expense associated with that is. So that is just part of an expense. By the way, that's probably going to be an ongoing expense for a period of time. Who knows how long? That's not necessarily, some of the things are, you know, they're probably good to do, but that's just something to consider from a financial perspective. But I can assure any spiritual leader, and you know, I mean, you have to do things like, okay, evaluate how long are we planning to do this? Do we even need the same physical space that we have now? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. One of the things that I remember I told Dr. Pulley a long time ago is that when we're talking about the diversity of people in general, I think that COVID has drawn churches to do what they're not comfortable doing, and that is reaching people out in the world, right, on the internet. I mean, if our goal as a church, as a spiritual community, is to meet people, then shouldn't we be where most people are? And that's online, right? And so it really, I think it gets back to a strategy. Like, do you really believe you need a physical space, or as big of a physical space? Because for many businesses, physical space, and by the way, this is going to happen to businesses too, you need to question, is that space, that lease that you have, is that something that you still need, or do you need to find a different space? Because you're going to have some people that are going to be physically still coming and others that are going to be online. So you really have to think, not just right now, but look out to say a year from now, what do we expect, right? So let's say tomorrow the virus goes away. By the way, that doesn't mean everybody's coming back to church. Some people are probably very comfortable staying at home, watching online, right? So so me being one of them. So I think that it's very important to really look at it as a strategy. This isn't just a one-time event. This is, where are we going from right here to where are we going in the next 3, 5, 10 years? Because that's going to help you determine what financial health, what kind of questions that you need to look at. And by the way, if your expenses are less, there's more to do with the money that is being given to give back to the world and be of service.
All right.
And as I was saying, it is so important that we realize the church is not the building, that the church is the people. And so what we really have to do is beef up contacting people, calling people, having people be a part of ministry teams, prayer teams, where people are able to connect. And that's the main thing for their mental wellness, is that they not feel isolated, or just because we're not in the building, don't nobody care about me, you know, or just because I'm not techno savvy like everybody else, that I'm just gone. So, I mean, we've had to do conference call because some of our members are not, you know, tech savvy. And so conference call was needed for some people, because that's how they can connect with some of our older people. So as many different ways as we can connect with people, the more effective we can be. Calling people, texting people, we miss you, we love you, just checking in. Do you need anything? How can we support you during this time? Help people feel connected, help people feel loved and emotionally cared for, as well as spiritually, you know, during this time. And it's a time of change, and change is not comfortable for most of us. We're creatures of habit. We like to know and be able to predict what's going to happen, but this is a change. And I don't believe that we're going back to the way things were. I don't believe that we're ever going back to the way things were, that things are going to be different. And it came to transform us, to change. The song said, I won't go back. I can't go back to the way things used to be.
I was just thinking that, Dr. I was just thinking that I won't go back, can't go. I was just thinking about that. That song was like right here in my head. I was like, yeah, let's just go ahead and sing it. You know, no more kumbaya, I can't go back, you know, and you really stressed, Dr. Foley, the fact that, you know, you remind us that, you know, the church is not, you know, the building, the church is the people. As I was preparing the music for tonight, I was getting ready, and I was like, you know, me and my, you know, energy, and I was like, oh my God, we could do Let Us Go Back to Church. And so I was getting ready to cue it up, you know, because our theme night is, you know, back to church, you know, back to the building, actually. And then I was like, Hector, no, it's not about back to the church, because you are the, so I have to remind myself, you know, that no, we are the church and the edifice is the building, and those are two separate entities. So yeah.
And Bishop Hector, I want to add something, just so Absolutely. If there are any spiritual leaders out there that are thinking, there's no way we have to have a physical church, we cannot possibly make that change. I am here to say, if the medical industry has been disrupted, and that is one of the most slow changing industries when it comes to business, we turned a medical practice that was used to having people show up at their doors, very similar to a church, into a practice that offered telehealth in like less than a week, right? Where other practices were like, oh, if I can't see my patients physically, then I just am not going to see patients. Well, I think the church has to open their mind up, like the medical practices have, and recognize that it's going to be a hybrid. We will have patients, we will have parishioners, we will have people that desire to come into the church physically, and you're going to still have some that want to connect virtually. So whatever you do when you re-enter, I really highly recommend that you have a hybrid solution. So even if you physically go back to church, still offer the online. Otherwise, you're going to see you lose the people, because now more than ever, people are getting used to being at home. They're kind of digging it. Or if they want to go out, then they're not maybe going to want to go to church. They want to do other things because they now know they can get church in a different way. I hear you guys saying the people, but I gotta tell you, I'm getting pretty good at preaching from my bedroom too.
Yes.
So there you go.
But Bishop Hector,
yes, sir.
The church has always been Billy Graham. He did 90% of his preaching on the radio. A.A. Allen, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Joel Osteen preaches to 40 million people before COVID. T.D. Jakes preaches to 25 million people. So the church, it isn't that the church all of a sudden has become tech savvy. The church has always been tech savvy. Even some of us, we've had sermons on YouTube. It's just that it's never became what we would call a virtual perspective. So we never saw the virtual perspective as satisfying that Hebrew passage, forsaking not the assembling of yourselves together. All of a sudden, 50,000 of us on Zoom came on Facebook in an effort to say to people, it's legitimate now. If you bedside Betty, or you're a bedside Baptist, or you stay home, it's okay. You have satisfied the idea of worship. So it broadened us. So when everyone is thinking that all of a sudden, because of COVID, the church becomes virtual. No, the church has been virtual. Kanye West came to Lake, whatever his church's name. They saw 145 million people watching Kanye West at Lakewood Church. Every day, the Hillsong Church, their virtual presence, Creflo Dollar's church will only hold 10,000, but Creflo claims 100 million people. So the thing happens is that if we could say to our ministers, what a great thing for an evangelistic arm for the virtual. We've always been. So for when someone walks to us, the history of the church, we were a secret organization until Constantine. Then after Constantine united the Roman Catholic Church or the Roman Catholic community with the church, we were able to come out of the catacombs. So we became just like our Judaic brothers. We start building churches. Now for people of color, the church is the central part of most communities. So because it's being central part of most communities, for me to tell a group of people 50 and over, do not come to church, just stay online. What it does to their psyche, it's not, please forgive me, Dr. Pulley, it does mess with their psyche, but it also messes with their being. Because see, the church is an extension of most 50 and over African Americans. The church is not just something they do, it's what they are. On their job, they are supervisor, but at church, they're deacon. On their job, they sweep floors, but at the church, they're reverend. And the thing that begins to happen is I'm killing their identity. I'm killing everything, and we are not giving them something in return. The only thing we're giving them, we're saying to them, a community. Now if I take a community and I strip it of its medical, like my community, all those little offices, medical offices, they were closed during COVID. We couldn't even get a test. And it had nothing to do with the people saying that I don't want to do telemedicine. They wasn't even doing telemedicine. They was doing no medicine. So all of the hospitals that were not quote unquote top hospitals, they was flooded with patients. And the doctors was 26, 28, 29. We have a Dr. Morissette on the line now, a 28-year-old doctor. That's a great doctor, but there are 50 and 60 doctors and 45 were home. So what we are having with the church, so I take the medical, I take the banking, I take the church, I take everything that makes the community a community. And then I'm telling them in 30 days, when Cuomo tells me I can open my church back, that all of a sudden now, this is what I have to address. And I'm asking for us in our reopening, it's not only must I make them feel comfortable financially, sociologically, psychologically, but their personhood. I must give them back their personhood. In a Black community, a house costs 100 to 200,000. A church can be built for $4 million in a neighborhood where the profit margin is crazy. So the church, it's going to look now like it's going to look as if a dinosaur, a relic. And what we as ministers must do, and as financial people, what we must do is not let that building become a relic. We must repurpose that building to where within everything we are doing, that building must be repurposed.
Absolutely.
I hear you. There's a word. You agree with that, Dr. Pulley? I hear you saying absolutely.
Repurposing, absolutely.
Repurposing, yeah. And I hear that word community. Dr. Morris said, with regards to community, what recommendations and you know we appreciate. I love how everything is just integrating and coming together so well, even organically. How can we as the church empower our communities, in particular people of color, what recommendations might you have for the importance of empowering our communities to pay a greater attention to their medical wellness?
Well, I think I want to address that Gina pointed out something very important in talking about budget and resources available to make things happen. I think that we have to first look at the size of the communities as well as the size of your congregation and look at what your church financially brings in and what you can put out. While there are things that you can do that are free, we do have to be cognizant that resources require different resources, i.e. money, to make things happen. But I do think that it's important in the African American community to discuss medical mistrust. That has been around for quite a while. And I think continuously going forward, that medical mistrust has kind of put us into a situation where we are dealing with some of the comorbidities that help, I guess, excel coronavirus forward. So as a church, I think we have to kind of meet people where they are and understand how they do feel about healthcare first. And that's the major thing, understanding that healthcare is important and how it aids you in just living a better quality of life and progressing and being here longer than you were expected to be. So once we do understand that each individual has to assess how they feel about healthcare and the importance of healthcare, then we can begin to roll out series of information. And I think that sometimes we have to be cognizant as people who have been educated or not so educated in how to make people feel comfortable with the knowledge, make it explainable and rememberable, because your goal is to get them to the doctor, to feel comfortable with going to the doctor and seeking help when they need help, and not just trying to self-medicate. And I think that's a huge thing in the African American community, is trying to solve problems by ourselves. So we have to kind of figure these things out, understand our church, our congregation, and the community, and understand where they're located and if they have access to medical care. How expensive is it? The resources that are available, are they working? How are their home lives? So all of these things are important players. And I think moving forward, we just have to kind of understand where we are with medicine and kind of develop a trust. And that may be just seeing more people that look like them actually delivering the information and breaking it down to them in ways in which they understand.
Now, Dr. Morissette, I heard Gina Folk mention contact tracing. Now, listen, you know, as my personal doctor, you know, both you and Dr. Pulley, you know, the two of you, you know, I have no problem putting out there. If you don't have a pandemic team, get you one. You know, Dr. Pulley, from a mental health perspective, he's getting me through. And then I've got Dr. Morissette on the medical side, they're getting me through. Now I've got a Gina Folk who's, you know, she's got me, you know, wondering, you know, lease or no lease, you know, so I encourage, if you don't have a pandemic wellness team, you need to get one. You heard it here tonight, folks. I heard her talk about that contact tracing, right? Because, you know, yeah, I did a news interview recently, and most of you heard me say, if I'm not living with you, I'm not sitting with you. I'm not sitting with you. I'm not eating with you. I'm not doing much of anything with you. How important do you think that contact tracing is?
I think it's very important. I guess one of the issues that public health officials are working with is how can they ramp it up to have adequate coverage to really contact trace people and really fully understanding the virus. So there are some apps that are being created. They're trying to work with cell phone providers to see, like, this person was at this location with these individuals. How do we get in touch with them to let them know that they may want to be aware that this person has been exposed, or you've been exposed to COVID-19, and how do we progress forward? So it's still fairly new. There's still a lot of kinks to be worked out, but I do think that's going to be one of the more beneficial players as we move forward and try to control this virus as it moves forward and changes and evolves. So just keeping that in mind. And I think people have to do their due diligence and kind of be good saints and good people of good character and honestly, openly say, yes, I think I may be exposed, I may be experiencing symptoms. And these are things that you're going to have to keep in mind as you go back to church. I think it's become one of those taboo things, like, oh my gosh, do I say that I have COVID? Are people going to look at me like I'm a leper? Or are they really going to actually understand that, hey, this is something that is serious, but I'm taking it serious and I'm trying to protect you and myself. So just being cognizant of, as you do go forward, you know, you have to make sure that you truly trust your parishioners, understand that they have to be cognizant of who they're around, and make sure that they're actually taking it as seriously as you are, or the person that's coming into the church? And do we have the resources to do those things that the CDC actually suggests, as Gina mentioned, taking temperatures, providing masks for those that don't have them, adequate masks, medical grade masks, making sure that you can distance with the congregation size that you have. All these different things are important as you move forward.
Listen, we've got to wrap up. This has been like an amazing conversation, and for those of you who are on the thread, I encourage you one more time, like share. This one is definitely one worth doing a watch party. Just get this information out to individuals, and if they have further questions, please feel free to inbox me. And no, I won't give you their phone numbers, but I will reach out on your behalf and try to get the answers and information for you and get that answer back to you as best as I possibly can. I'm going to ask each of you a question. 30 seconds. You get 30 seconds to give me the answer. And so I'm going to give the answer. I'm going to give the question. I'm going to give you guys like a couple of seconds to think on it. It's a very simple question. And the question is, bottom line, is it safe to be back in the building yet? Why or why not? In 30 seconds as best you can. While they're contemplating their answer from their various perspectives as spiritual leader, as strategist, and as a mental health professional, again, share this. We'll be back on next week talking about our young Black men. We have three young men of color that are going to come and talk to us on next week as a part of our Kingdom Conversation. But again, thank you. We heard some great perspective on tonight for those of you who may already be back in your buildings. For those of you who may be trying to determine, is it time? Do I go back yet or not yet? Hopefully something said on tonight, has offered you some perspective. So in 30 seconds or less, Dr. Stokeling, and again, thank you for jumping in. I mean, jumping in.
This is fun.
Thank you so much, and we'll certainly have you again if you're willing. 30 seconds or less. Is it safe to go back yet? Why or why not?
I think the church should be apprehensive because this has been a wake-up call to the church, and the church has seen that anytime there's an inequality, the first place that it's brought the attention to is the church. Right now, we are the scapegoat for people who are claiming that we did not put into practice the distancing, the mask, the thermometers and all of that, which churches have done. Our parishioners are not adverse to following. They've been following since they were in bush oak trees. And so the church right now can be the center and the shining beacon for how this should be done. But we must listen not to what we're hearing around us, but we must listen to trustworthy source. It cannot be political. It cannot be because of pain. It cannot be because of anything, but this is the right thing to do.
Thank you so much. Gina Folk, safe to go back? Why or why not?
So I'll say yes if you do your own screening, which means that you pass can you do the masks? Can you do the proper physical distancing? Are you potentially prepared to do temperature checks, contact tracing? Like if you can answer that you can do all of those things with confidence, then yes. If you're not sure about any of them, then hold tight until you are. That would be my advice.
Thank you so much. Dr. Morissette, bottom line, safe to go back? Why or why not?
Again, I'm going to have to agree with Dr. Stokely where I say I'm a little apprehensive. I just feel like there are too many different unknown variables in this situation, a lot of unanswered questions. We're not clear on transmission, how things are moving, what exactly is causing it, all these different answers. And we just cannot keep a good hold on where every individual is going. Even though we want to see people in the building and them praising the Lord and being obedient to God, I think we just need to spend a little more time and wait on the scientists to get clear on what's happening.
Okay, and I apologize, and we're gonna have to have a part two because I didn't really even get to my good question about, they keep saying, and please stay away from the chanting. And I'm like, is that their way of saying no speaking in tongues? They're like, no singing, no chanting, no singing, no chanting. So we need to have a part two because I need to get some clarity on that. Like, I'm like chanting. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
No laying of hands.
Yes.
And no deliverance. No deliverance.
None of that. Dr. Pulley, coming to you, sir.
Sorry.
No.
Sorry.
It's been great. There's no apologies needed. You guys have been a phenomenal. I think the thread is in one accord on that. This has been a phenomenal team. So we definitely want to invite you back for part two. But Dr. Pulley, why not? Safe, not safe? What's up? Bishop, doctor, psychologist, mental health professional, 10 seconds per hat. What you got?
I say it's only safe to go back to church if you're not going to go back to church as usual. That you have to see church in a different way if we're going to resume physical. If you're still thinking that we're going to go back to the way things were, no, because we're not going back. We're going to a new way of worship, to a new way of fellowship and interacting and learning and growing. So if you're open to do things differently, then we can establish a new normal. But if you want to go back to church the way it used to be, you're not even ready.
Don't even think about it. Listen, this has been great. Again, thank you, Dr. Stokling. Thank you, Gina Folk. Thank you, Dr. Morissette, Dr. Pulley, as always. We celebrate you guys for just the awesome perspective that you shared with us on tonight. For those of you that were with us here in the Zoom room, thank you so much. For those of you that were with us on the Facebook thread, thank you so much for being with us on tonight. I'm going to close with the news interview. And listen, let's keep in touch. And again, I do hope that you'll all be willing to come back for a part two, because I think it's certainly needed as people continue to contemplate. And Gina Folk, you're right. The high road, that high consciousness, let's stay there. Let's stay planted there. So to everybody, thank you so much. Again, continue to share, do your watch parties, and always feel free to join us here on Monday nights at 8 p.m. for Kingdom Conversations. Good night, everyone. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much.
Good to meet you all. Thank you.
Good to meet you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
As part of phase 2, churches are now allowed to do indoor services. Elijah Westbrook spoke with Bishop A. Bernard Hector of Kingdom Covenant Ministries and Network about how he's getting ready to reopen his doors to parishioners.
It took me a while to get used to it. Sitting in a room, nobody saying amen, no music, so just me.
Bishop Hector says it's felt like 3 long months of not being able to deliver his sermons to his parishioners face to face. Now that Baltimore City is allowing churches to do indoor services, it takes some readjusting.
We're going to take it like the city did it. Phase 1. We're going to do it, very loose. You're free to come back. You can stay home and watch virtual. Phase 2, we really do kind of want everybody to come back. However, if it's your comfort, we'll still, do the virtual ministry thing, but it'll be progressively.
Although this church here does not plan on reopening until July, preparations are already underway, from the chairs being properly spaced out to the floors being bleached.
We do plan on giving everybody at least 6 to 10 feet. If you're with your family, of course, you're welcome to sit together. You can, if you're all in the same household, you might as well bring those chairs as close as you want, But if we're not living with you, we're not sitting with you. And so that's going to be kind of the rule of thumb.
As it stands, churches can operate at 50% capacity, and guests must wear a mask. It's a new norm that's going to take some getting used to. Bishop Hector wants his members to know this.
We are planning and making preparations with their best interests and their well-being at heart.
In North Baltimore, Elijah Westbrook, Fox 45 News.
Everybody praise him. Everybody praise him. Worthy of all the glory. I'm gonna praise him. Everybody praise him. Everybody praise him. Worthy of all the glory. Say praise. Praise. Say praise. Everybody praise him. Everybody praise him. Because he's worthy of all the glory. Come on, praise him. Everybody praise him. Because he's worthy of all the glory. Let's say praise. Say praise. Say praise. Praise him.